and that recording will be available online for your Virginia Village residents. So for those neighbors that could not join us tonight, please let them know that this recording is available and it will be posted to our webpage. Similar to what Scott said, last week we had our land use and housing discussion. That recording is available on our webpage, and also the survey is available online for those of you that couldn't join us last week. This is meant to be a very interactive activity, and so we're asking folks to participate as you feel comfortable. We actually have a pretty short or pretty small gathering tonight. It looks like there's only about 3 or 4 residents here. Compared to last week, I think we had about 15 to 20. So this is a little bit different for me. So hopefully we all kind of get to know each other tonight. And if you feel comfortable speaking, we ask that you raise your hand and we will call on you as best as we can. So feel free to raise your hand and then unmute yourself, and then we will just go from there. So the last thing I will say is we are going to have poll questions. So for those of you that want to participate and have your phones or your computers handy, we are going to be operating on pollev.com/AMP812. And I'll show this to you in just a minute, but I just wanted to get this for you just in case, just so you can get ready. But it's pollev.com/AMP812. And so I'll show this in just a minute, but if you wanted to get ready, go ahead and type that into your phone. So
could you put it on chat? That would be easier.
Oh yeah, great. And I think, so Mallory, I don't know if I see the chat here, but I think the chat is for everyone. So why don't we just, once I get to those questions, I'll pause on that introductory screen and let you guys type that in. So we'll get to that in just a minute. So as Scott mentioned, tonight we are talking about 2 subjects, and that is the first topic is mobility. So we have a couple of bicycle questions, and also we're going to be talking a lot about kind of the major corridors in the area. So Evans Avenue, Leadscale, and Colorado Boulevard, as well as Quebec and some of the other collectors in the area. And then we do have some quality of life questions specific to parks and recreation, so parks amenities, environmentally resilient questions and things like that. So the idea is to spend about 5 to 7 minutes on each question, and I'm going to do my best to kind of move us along here. If we run out of time, that's totally fine, and I certainly would encourage folks to jump on our webpage to kind of continue the discussion and to continue to provide feedback, because we will have these as part of our online surveys moving forward. So that's kind of the general outline of tonight's meeting. And again, I hope this is a very great discussion, and we look forward to hearing from you. So with that, I am going to share my screen and we're going to get going here. And the first thing I want to show you is we're going to talk a little bit about what we've heard. So Scott mentioned a lot about kind of our phase 1 outreach. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of what the community was telling us over the last couple of months. So when it comes to mobility, the community has told us that they want to see vehicles slow down on major corridors and along neighborhood streets, and also wants improvements to make pedestrians and cyclists safer and more comfortable. So we have a couple of questions for you, and the following questions are really going to help us understand how to prioritize improvements to transportation safety throughout near Southeast. So think of transportation kind of in the general sense, whether it's vehicular movement, bicycle and ped, or also transit. And you can think about this, generally in terms of the entire near Southeast area, but we're also kind of interested in kind of what are some of the concerns and some of the responses from residents in Virginia Village. So as you think about this, also kind of think a little bit about kind of your individual neighborhood and kind of how you want to share, you move about the neighborhood as well as some of the safety and some of the concerns that you might have when you do navigate corridors and things like that. So I'm going to pivot to our other screen here. And again, thank you for your patience as we navigate the technology here. So this is our survey here. And so again, I'll give folks just maybe a minute or two to pull out their phones or type into another browser. Again, this is an interactive survey. We are going to be at pollev.com/AMP812. And you can see that here right at the top, pollev.com/AMP812. And what I'll do is I will ask a question and then we'll pause for discussion. So again, Mallory and I are here. We want to hear from you, and we'll take as much time as we need to kind of understand some of the responses from Virginia Village. So one more time, pollev.com/AMP812. Okay. So first question tonight is specific to bicyclists and how bicyclists navigate not only the near Southeast area, but also Virginia Village. So in terms of safety, what is most important to you to improve the safety and comfort of riding a bicycle in near Southeast? And this is a ranking question. So there are 4 options here. And we're asking you to kind of rank these in order of importance. So protected bike lanes, improvements at intersections, striped bike lanes, or improved signage. And it looks like a few folks have already responded. We'll give everyone a couple of minutes here, and please take your time, and then also let us know if you're having issues accessing the survey. Okay, well, everyone's looking back up at me, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll start the discussion here. So as you can see here, it looks like we have improvements at intersections and striped bike lanes, which have kind of risen to the top here. So is there anyone that would like to kind of speak a little bit as to why they chose improvements at intersections as kind of their top priority?
This is Fred. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Fred. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. I bicycle quite a bit. I've lived in. I was born in Denver also, but a long time ago. But I've lived in this area for like 40 years or longer. But to me, as a cyclist, the big problem on intersections is one thing is cars running red lights. Also, I got hit once on my bike with a car that didn't stop to make a right turn on a red light, or a stop sign, actually. So traffic is a big problem to me. Intersections, I think, are the most dangerous thing for cyclists because of cars not following the rules, either going too fast or running red lights or turning right on red lights without stopping. Big problem.
Thank you for sharing. I'm really sorry to hear about your accident, but unfortunately, I will say it's not the first that we've heard of that. So we hear a lot about kind of the safety issues with bicyclists and vehicles that especially turn without really kind of looking around before they do so. Is there anyone else that would like to share as to why they chose improvements at intersections as their number one, or maybe your other priority was striped bike lanes or protected bike lanes or improved signage? David, go ahead.
Hi. I chose the striped bike lanes just because it makes the most obvious difference. I don't know how much more we can do at the intersections. Most of the intersections, it's got good pedestrian crossing signs. I just don't. But I know that striped bike lanes would make a difference. I think it's made a difference on Florida.
Okay, thank you for sharing. We have Jenica and then Spencer. Go ahead, Jenica.
Yeah, similar to the other folks, my biggest concern is collisions. And it's the biggest thing that keeps me from riding my bike more often. And so, definitely in the area, my preferred method of travel is whenever I can get onto Cherry Creek Trail. But obviously there's lots of parts of town that can't reach through there. And so I actually nominated protected bike lanes because that's what makes me feel safest as a cyclist. And then I seconded improvements in intersection because similar to, I believe it was Fred, identified intersections seem to be grand opportunities for collisions. So that's my big concern. And I think we're just kind of looking at it from different potential solutions.
Great, thank you for sharing. Spencer, go ahead.
Yeah, I put protected bike lanes as number one, and I'm kind of curious why other people in the group are putting striped bike lanes ahead of protected bike lanes, because I feel like a protected bike line is far preferred over a striped, because I mean, I ride down Florida all the time, and I don't know how many times I've seen cars drive into that bike lane because there's nothing preventing them from driving down it.
Yeah.
Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to what they chose before we move on to our next question?
This is Fred again. You know, again, kind of going back to my concern about traffic. One of my pet peeves is that the city doesn't seem to enforce traffic laws. Maybe they do in certain areas, but certainly not in our neighborhoods. You know, it's almost like at Monaco and Cherry Creek. Almost every light change, somebody goes through the red light, you know, when there's heavy traffic. And it just seems like the culture of drivers has gotten worse over the years, you know, for speeding and ignoring traffic regulations. So it seems like we can make all the improvements in the world at intersections, but if the drivers get away with going fast and making illegal turns on red lights and stop signs, we're still going to have problems.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And you know, this is all great information. And I should say that you know, I think that working with our partners at DOTI, which is our Department of Transportation, you know, they're definitely thinking about this holistically, and there might not be just kind of one specific you know, treatment for the entire area, right? It might be on kind of an intersection by intersection basis, or maybe it would be a combination of some of these options. So, so certainly they're not, you know, thinking about this as kind of a one size fits all approach. And so this is all great feedback. And I think that ultimately, when it comes to the safety of bike riders, I think we've heard that sometimes it takes an entire combination of this, right? That it's not just maybe one particular safety improvement. So. Okay, great. Well, why don't we go ahead and move on to our next question here. And let's see if I can do this. Okay, so now we are going to talk about some of the major corridors and collectors in the area. So in working with our partners at DOTI, they would like to understand kind of which type of infrastructure improvement should be prioritized along Evans. And so this is another ranking question. And so what we're asking folks to do is think about Evans Avenue. And if you had your magic wand, what would you prioritize in terms of you know, mobility improvements along Evans? Would they fall in terms of vehicular improvements, transit ridership improvements, bicycle improvements, pedestrian improvements, or something else? And I will note that we are going to be talking about Evans, Leadscale, Colorado Boulevard, and I believe Quebec. So again, which type of infrastructure improvements should be prioritized along Evans Avenue, and we're asking you to rank vehicular, transit, pedestrian, bicycle, or other. Okay, well, folks are finishing that up there. Looks like we got a couple more responses trickling in. So who would like to talk a little bit about why they chose vehicular as a priority for infrastructure improvements along Evans? Jenica, go ahead, please.
Evans seems to be a major vehicular challenge, and so there's a lot that can be approved across here. In my 4 years of living in Virginia Village, Evans has seemingly been always 100% under construction, and it seems like it's a major thoroughfare for anyone coming from further east, or needing to go further east. And I don't think we're not going to have cars disappear any day soon. And since it is a big commuter corridor, that's why I selected vehicular first, since it seems to be the most problematic that way.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to talk a little bit about why they chose vehicular, or one of the other options is kind of their first priority, or maybe even their last priority? We see that bicyclists is kind of came in fourth here. So anyone that would like to speak to that, we'd love to hear from you.
This is Fred again.
Go ahead, Fred.
As for bicycle, my feeling is anybody that tries to ride a bike along Evans is crazy. So that's why I ranked it at the very bottom, actually, because there's other routes, to go west or east to avoid Evans, pretty much. But I ranked transit as first, and that was just because it is a major corridor, and I think it needs to have good transit service going east-west. There's a lot of people that ride the 21 bus. I've used it myself a lot, and it maybe needs to run more often. I don't know, but I just think it's always going to be jammed with cars, but I think it's utilized a lot by the people taking the bus.
Great, thank you for sharing. And I will say, I'll take a moment just to again plug our online survey, because we do have additional bicycle questions on the survey, including kind of an interactive map where you can not only comment on existing bike infrastructure, bike lanes, bike routes, and things like that within the near Southeast area plan, but we're also asking folks that maybe there's a better option. So maybe there's a better east-west option, Fred, that you would like to tell us about. So again, just a plug for our online survey. David, go ahead. It looks like you have your hand up.
Yes, for Fred's reasons, I put bicycle first, because right now you'd have to be crazy to ride your bike along Evans. And there's a lot of room for improvement, and that could make that would make a big difference.
Great. I like it. Very, very visionary, David. Very aspirational. That's great. Okay, is there anyone else? Is there anyone that would like to speak as to why they chose other? Maybe there's an option that we haven't thought of. And if you don't, that's okay, but I figured I'd pose that question. Okay, well, let's move on here. We are going to go to our next option here. Let's see. Oh, okay, here we go. So again, same question, only this time we are talking about Colorado Boulevard. So which type of infrastructure improvement should be prioritized along Colorado Boulevard? So again, same options: vehicular improvements, pedestrian improvements, bicycle improvements, transit improvements, or other. And this is Colorado Boulevard, which is our western boundary of the planning area. Okay. Well, a few more responses trickle in, but I do see that transit is ranked #1. I can't say I'm surprised to see that. So who would like to speak a little bit as to why they chose transit as kind of their first priority? Spencer, go ahead.
I know we talked about this in the near Southeast area plan, like smaller group, but Colorado Boulevard just seems better suited for transit focused initiatives moving forward. And then, after that, vehicular, just because it's already the main thoroughfare. But, I would definitely prefer transit moving forward just because it's got it's already got the bones to build on top of. And I feel like that's something that should be a focus moving forward.
Great, thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to talk about which infrastructure improvements they prioritize along Colorado? Okay. All right, so next option is a focus on Leadscale Avenue. So same question, which type of infrastructure improvement should be prioritized along Leadscale? And again, same options here, vehicular improvements, pedestrian improvements, bicycle improvements, transit improvements, or other. And I'm sure Mallory and I have some thoughts about Leadsdale going to high school up there for 4 years. All right, let the last couple of responses come in here. So would anyone like to speak as to why they chose transit as their #1 option? It looks like, again, that came in first priority here, similar to Colorado Boulevard. I'm assuming it's probably for the same reasons, but if anyone would like to speak to that, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, I see Fred waving at me. Go ahead, Fred.
Right, I don't want you to fall asleep there. Yeah, I think it's kind of the same reasons, at least from my perspective. Leadsdale is really a major corridor for people going to and from downtown on the buses, like the 83 bus. Whenever I ride it to go downtown, it generally has quite a few people on it, no matter what time of day. So transit is real important along that corridor for a lot of people that don't have cars or don't want to drive downtown and park. And then my second concern was vehicular, and I don't know what can be done. I mean, again, it's really heavy traffic on Leadsdale. It depends time of day, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say I used to take that 83 bus as well. For a while there, I rented in kind of the West Wash Park neighborhood, and I would catch that bus almost every day to come down to the city. So really, I definitely understand what you're saying there. Anyone else want to talk about Leadsdale Avenue before we move on to the next collector, arterial?
I think one reason why I demoted bicycle on this versus other corridors is that it very many ways kind of parallels the Cherry Creek Trail. And so if you're trying to get from Virginia Village to the Cherry Creek Center toward downtown, et cetera, that's better suited through the Cherry Creek Trail. Transit, I also identified as a preference because it's direction in toward Cherry Creek, in toward Wash Park, in toward downtown. And so it seems most suitable for transit, along with having the high school along there.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everyone. So let's move along here. So now we are going to talk about Quebec. So which type of infrastructure improvement should be prioritized along Quebec? So think a little bit about the character of Quebec, some of the land uses along Quebec, and rank the following: vehicular, pedestrian, bicycle, transit, or other. All right, so we'll let those responses trickle in. Not really surprised. I think that these, Spencer can probably attest to this. I think that these results kind of mirror what our steering committee has told us about Quebec. So I see bicycle infrastructure is ranked number one. Would anyone like to talk a little bit about why they feel that Quebec might be more conducive to improvements in bicycle infrastructure? All right, Fred, go ahead.
Well, one thing that we don't have very good, we don't have very good bicycle lanes going south, north-south in the city. So although I ranked it 2, but it might be a candidate though for, having a good protected bike lane or something would be nice. Actually, when I first moved here, Quebec didn't go through. It was just kind of a dirt road almost, because it didn't go over Cherry Creek. But it's really changed.
It really has. Okay, anyone else? And I think we're just about ready to transition to our quality of life questions. So Spencer, go ahead.
Like you were saying, we kind of talked about this in the steering committee, but the reason I think the steering committee leaned more towards bicycle is because there's just so many parks on Quebec that, pedestrian, bicycling, transit all seem to kind of lend itself to that. And, moving forward, it might be a good thing to focus on is just, let's push people to those parks, let's get them there by bicycle, let's get them there by walking, let's get them there by bus, and kind of promote that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, anyone else before we pivot to quality of life? Okay, so I am going to share my screen again here. And so we are moving on to the quality of life topic. And similar to mobility, I wanted to start off by just showing folks kind of what we heard. And then, I want to kind of phrase and present the questions that we have for you tonight. So what we've heard during phase 1 outreach is that the near southeast area has many great parks, but the current features and amenities in those parks may not meet all the needs of the community, and some residents of near southeast do not find it easy to access those parks. So folks have also told us that landscaping can be improved in some areas, and we can look to more resilient landscaping in some of the parks and throughout near southeast. So what we're going to be asking in a few questions here are, we would like to understand what new amenities in parks would be most valuable, and how we can improve access to the existing parks, where landscaping should be improved, and the priorities for resiliency. So similar to our mobility questions, let's go ahead and jump right in. So which potential amenities would you most like to see in a park near you? And so here we're asking folks to rank their top 3, and there are quite a few options here, so I'll give folks a few minutes to respond. So again, top 3 amenities that you would like to see in the park that is closest to you: seating, athletic fields, sports courts, playground, dog park, picnic tables and shelters, exercise equipment, running and walking trails, natural landscaping, green infrastructure, public art, or other. So give folks a few minutes here. Again, these are the top 3 amenities that you would like to see in a park near you.
Can you say more about what is meant by green infrastructure?
Yep, absolutely. I was just thinking I should probably say something a little bit about that. So green infrastructure is, think of kind of natural infrastructure that really helps to not only kind of accommodate some of the stormwater runoff from impervious surfaces, but also kind of helps treat some of that runoff. So really think about improving the water quality in the area, kind of capturing some of that stormwater runoff that will sometimes lead to localized flooding. So the idea is we would use the natural environment, natural landscaping, natural plants to really help kind of mitigate some of those flooding concerns and help with some of the water quality issues in near Southeast. Okay. Oh. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about this? And again, if you're still voting, that's totally fine. But it looks like we've got a three-way tie, if you will, for running and walking trails, natural landscaping, and green infrastructure. So, so who would like to talk a little bit about why they chose one of those options? And then maybe also tell us a little bit about kind of the park that you were thinking of in your response. Or maybe if you chose another option, I'd like to hear about that as well. So I saw Spencer, I think you put your hand up, and then Fred, I'll come to you after. Go ahead, Spencer.
Yeah, I guess one thing I should be a little clear about is, so the running walking trails, I mean, all the parks in Virginia Village kind of have a running walking trail. So I guess that's more like improving them than it is anything. And even then, I think the only one that would really need improvement is maybe Garland Park. But yeah, and again, like you've heard me a million times, I think a dog park is needed in the southeast area, and Virginia Village between Garland and Cook Park are prime examples of someplace that could support a dog park.
Great, thank you, Spencer. And before I get to Fred, since we do have our resident park expert here, Mallory, Spencer, do you have an idea of kind of what type of improvements you would potentially like to see at Garland Park or any of the other parks in near Southeast?
Really, when I think of like the big parks in the Virginia Village area, you know, Garland and Cook are the two big ones. You've got Potenza kind of there on the north side too, but Potenza I view more as like a family park where kids can go and like stretch their legs, you know, get on the playground sets. Garland, I view more as like the recreational park where, you know, you can go play soccer or you can go play rugby. So it might be nice because I'm not sure. I don't think there's a basketball court over there. There might be. I think the only basketball court I know of though is over in Ash Grove. Yeah, I mean, just more opportunities. I mean, I think something that would be fun is like a pickleball court somewhere. We don't have any pickleball courts. I don't think anywhere in the city that I'm aware of, or maybe they're over by Cherry Creek. I can't remember. But that would be a neat little thing to look into.
Great, thank you. I have to admit, I had never heard of pickleball until I started this process. So now I feel like I know all about pickleball, and we're hearing all about folks that want pickleball courts in your Southeast. So
Yeah,
Fred,
fun.
yeah, Fred, let's go ahead and go to you.
Okay. Yeah, actually, there's a bunch of new pickleball courts over at Eisenhower. That's kind of the major pickleball location at the moment. We live near Cook Park, so I know it pretty well. You know, it has a trail that goes around the park, but the problem is it's never been maintained. And it's real difficult for people to walk on. You know, the asphalt is crumbly, and there's actually potholes in the you know, the trail going. You know, and part of it's there's some concrete, but it's mostly asphalt, and it needs to be redone. I selected as one of my three other, but it didn't allow me to type in what I want to explain. And my other category is restrooms. at Cook Park, there are no restrooms. We've run into the same problem, at other parks that are closed during the winter, where there's no restrooms. Like Garland, I think, is the same way. So I think restrooms is an important thing for the parks, especially for families. And then I think I selected picnic tables also. I think those are really useful for families. And like at Cook, we only have one area. Well, we have a few, but that probably needs to be looked into to see if there's opportunity for adding more. So anyway, those are my 2 comments.
Fred, I want to jump in and just let you know, and hopefully it's good news. We are going in to improve the high priority portions of the walk at Cook Park because of the conditions. So yeah, we're putting a contractor under contract right now to do that shortly. So we're making improvements to the walks and the playground there. Later, we're hoping to look at the restrooms that are as close to the basketball courts and the playground there. But we do put in some portalettes near the recreation center during the winter when those bathrooms are closed. And same with Garland, the bathrooms are usually closed there. I don't know if we moved the portalettes or not, but we usually had those over by the baseball and softball fields.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mallory. And yeah, that's great news about Cook Park. Before we move on, Jenica has some great things in the chat. She mentioned that she always thinks of Cook and Garland Park most, and is talking about how much she enjoys the natural landscaping for walking around, native plants, and really enjoying a nice place to sit for a picnic. Also brings up a little bit about what Spencer was talking about potentially having a dog park in the area. And she does think that Cook Park would be, seems like an adequate spot for a dog park. So just wanted to make sure we acknowledge that. Thank you, Jenica. All right, let's go ahead and move to our next question here. And so as I mentioned, we did hear from folks that access is sometimes an issue. They sometimes struggle to get to the park. So we want to kind of understand a little bit about why, what makes it harder for you to go to a park. So select all that apply, and maybe you feel that you don't have issues accessing a park, but it's certainly something that we heard, and we want to make sure that we allow for improvement if this is the case. So again, select all that apply, and we want to know what makes it hard for you to get to a park. So options are: there's not one nearby, it's difficult to walk to the park, it's difficult to bike to the park, it's difficult to take transit or to drive, or you feel that the park seems kind of unwelcoming. Or there's maybe another option that we haven't asked. So again, what makes it harder for you to go to a park? And please select all that apply.
Out of curiosity, would difficult to park be under driving there, or would that just be other?
Oh, that's a really good question. Let's file that under other, and that's something we can talk about, Spencer. So yeah, Spencer brings up a good point that if it's hard to actually park your vehicle at the park, that's something that maybe we would classify as other. Okay, give folks just a couple more seconds here. Okay, looks like a pretty even split here. So Fred, I saw you wave at me again, so go ahead and tell us what you chose and why.
Well, I didn't choose anything initially because I don't have a problem with any of these. Fortunately, I'm 5 or 10 minutes walk from Cook Park, but none of these things I can ride my bike or drive. It seemed like they should have had a choice here that says, I don't have a problem, because the question is geared to me. So
yeah. That's good. Anyone else want to chime in as to what they chose and why before we get to our next question? And Jenica notes that she really enjoys walking to the parks, but sometimes it's difficult to cross Monaco or Cherry Creek North or Holly to get there. We've heard a lot about that. I think a lot of this does have to do with some of our mobility questions that we asked and some of the pedestrian and bicyclist safety improvements that folks would like to see along our collector streets. Okay. All right, well, we'll move along here. We've got just 2 more questions. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about resiliency. So I explained a little bit about kind of what green infrastructure is, and this is definitely kind of geared towards that. So when thinking about kind of the landscaping and green infrastructure or environmental resiliency in the area, where is it most important to add or improve landscaping in near southeast? And so again, you can kind of think a little bit about Virginia Village. So when you're out and about, when you're walking, when you're biking, where do you think more landscaping, trees, plants, native species, where do you think that those should be located? So we're asking folks to rank their top 3 or select their top 3. And so when it comes to locations, the options are along some of the major streets. So you can think about Florida, Quebec, Evans, Colorado. I believe that should say in shopping areas and in parks along neighborhood streets. So, maybe residential streets or maybe some of the smaller collectors, along trails or along routes to parks. So when you're riding your bike to the park, maybe there's a particular route that you think more landscaping should be available and should be approved upon. So again, where is it most important to add or improve landscaping in near southeast? All right. Give folks a few more seconds here. Okay, it looks like the #1 response was in parks. And then it seems like we've got a pretty even distribution after that. So who would like to speak as to why they chose in parks as kind of their first option to improve landscaping and resiliency? Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak as to why they maybe chose a different option and why they may have chosen that? Okay. All right.
I'll say something.
Go ahead, David. Yep.
About it in parks, the parks seem very well, they're kind of bare. They're more I think they're more geared towards playing fields and let your dog chase a ball across the field.
Okay.
And landscaping would make them more interesting and add a different level of beauty.
Okay, great. And just out of curiosity, David, is there a particular park you're thinking of? And then also, again, since we have Mallory here, what type of landscaping are you kind of generally thinking of? Is it more trees? Is it natural landscaping? Is it a combination?
There really aren't a whole lot of flowers that get planted in the parks, in Cook Park and Garland Park.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Go ahead, Fred.
Oh, the other thing about the parks would be, it would be nice to see more drought tolerant landscaping. Right now it's pretty much all grass and trees, but over time, I think it would be great to do more, xeriscaping. You could still have large grass areas for the, dogs to run and people and stuff, but it seems like it would save money and it would also add a little more interest, to the parks.
Great, thank you for sharing, Fred. And Jenica has provided some ideas in the chat. She talks a little bit about providing trees, native plants, flowers, plants with character that catch the eye. So you've got your work cut out for you, Mallory. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move along here. So this is going to be our last question tonight, and we're doing great on time. So thinking a little bit about, specifically about the resiliency piece and green infrastructure, which potential benefits from improved landscaping and green infrastructure are most important to you? So select your top 3. So this is really, using our landscaping to kind of work for us and kind of help mitigate some of the negative impacts of climate change and flooding and things like that. So we're looking at reducing flooding, reduced water use, wildlife or pollinator habitat, reduced heating, better air quality, or improved appearance. So again, your top 3 benefits that you would like to see from improved landscaping and green infrastructure. Give folks a few more seconds here. Okay. So yeah, another fairly even distribution here. You can see that wildlife and pollinator habitat came in as kind of the #1 priority. And that's certainly something that I think we see on the news quite a bit. So who would like to speak a little bit as to why they chose that, or maybe there's another option that you would like to talk about is why you feel that's important? Okay. Well, that's quite all right. Oh, go ahead, David.
So we have over here, we have some votes for owls and foxes, some of our favorite things to see in the parks and in the neighborhoods and in our backyard.
Great. Yeah, I have to say, I every once in a while I'll jump on the Nextdoor app and someone's has a photo of like a fox that they've seen in their backyard or walking along the park. So certainly not alone in that thought. Okay. Anyone have any final thoughts on this question? All right, well, go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. And so we finished right on time. And I think any minute now, Scott is going to be inviting us back to the main room. We're going to have a little bit of a report out. And so really, I just wanted to just take kind of a moment here and just thank you for participating. I know we had a very small group tonight, and sometimes that's good, but sometimes it's it can be difficult. But I thought the conversation was really helpful to Mallory and I, and Mallory's been taking notes. So these are things that we're going to report back to the project team on, and also some of our partner agencies. So again, just thank you for your patience tonight. And, we look forward to continuing the discussion. As I mentioned, we've got a pretty, as I mentioned earlier, we've got a pretty robust webpage that really is kind of a one-stop shop for folks to continue to kind of follow us in the process. We have a number of great surveys that we've launched within the last couple of weeks, so kind of brand new, and really encouraging folks to kind of take those on your own time, really give us all the feedback you can, and it's going to cover all of the topics. So land use and housing and economy, which is what we focused on last week, and mobility and quality of life, which is what we talked about tonight. So please make sure you take those, and also tell your neighbors that couldn't join us tonight to also take those as well. And we're trying to get as much feedback as we can in this phase 2 process. So with that, I don't know if I can send everyone back to the main room, so we might just have to.
I have a question for you.
Oh yeah, go ahead, David.
What's been the budget for this planning process? How much is the city putting into this?
You know, David, I don't have that number on with me. I can talk to Scott. So Scott has been the one that's kind of been involved in the initial creation of this particular plan and working on the budget. So I can reach out to him and I can make sure we can get back to you with that answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I think if you hit leave room, Mallory, do you think that takes us back to the main room?
I was just looking at that. I think if you hit leave room.
Okay, great. So yeah, go ahead and click that leave room button. It's that blue button that should be on the bottom right, at least it is for me. And that should take you back to the main room. So thanks, everybody.
I got a quick question for you, Jason.
Oh,
if
go
you're
ahead,
still
Fred.
there.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I just got involved in this tonight, so I hadn't been involved earlier on, but what are the chances that all of this effort will be utilized in the future?
So that's the $1 million question, right? That's something that we get asked a lot. I will tell you that the chances are good. One thing that has always kind of excited me about the neighborhood planning initiative is, and also kind of the city in general, is we are a city that uses these planning documents. So we don't do a robust planning effort like this and then just kind of, want these plans to sit on a shelf. And so these are, these are not regulatory documents in the sense that it's not going to automatically affect change day one, but it will start to kind of set in motion some future policy guidance, and we'll work with Parks and Rec, we'll work with Dottie to kind of, transform these areas and to kind of transform Evans Avenue and kind of get things in place. So these are meant to be 20-year visions, so they certainly can take a while, but I am happy to report that, these are plans that we want to use and that we don't want to go to waste. So that the chances are very good that change comes out of these.
Okay, well, thanks for doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had good discussions. Like I said before, we'd like to have a brief recap, so if I can have each of the facilitators just give us the most important thing your group discussed really quickly, and then we can all, or let you all get out of here on time. For those of you who are interested in the chance to win a gift card to Target or a local restaurant, I'll put this link in the chat. You can go to enter your email address. We'll have a drawing here before too long and select some winners from that. But with that, like I said, why don't we have folks, let's start with Cortland, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. So I'd say an overall theme from our transportation discussion was that pedestrian, transit, and bike facilities tended to rank the highest when we asked about what improvements are needed. And they did, the top response did vary by corridor. And so there were some corridors where transit was a priority and others where pedestrian or bike facilities were a priority. But vehicles tended not to rank very high in most of the discussion, because I guess the streets already do a pretty good job of accommodating vehicles for the most part, the major corridors.
Great, thanks, Cortland. Eric, you want to go?
Sure, I was with Indian Creek and we had a pretty vigorous discussion about Evans being a major east-west corridor and needing to be able to maintain throughput in getting vehicles east and west, but thinking about where and how we could make it a little more humane and a little more pedestrian based in some key places. The Old Rainbow Music Hall was one that was mentioned of what it used to be, and maybe we could find a way to do a little bit more of that. And then of course, because we were Indian Creek, we talked a lot about Quebec and sort of the role of Quebec and how the different sections of Quebec are maintained and look and feel very differently. And there's a need and a desire to make that more of a high character street.
Great, thanks, Eric. Libby, you want to go?
Yeah, so I was in University Hills North, and so we also discussed a lot about Evans and then Colorado Boulevard. And it really seemed like currently the residents feel like it's hard to get out of the neighborhood unless you're in a vehicle. And so finding other modes of transportation, so especially pedestrians or bikes along Evans was prioritized. And then for the parks, since University Hills North currently doesn't have a park, but they are getting one, we kind of talked about what they'd like to see, and they'd really like a park that is for the neighborhood and that they can walk to, because currently there's no parks that are really walkable from this part of the city.
Thanks, Libby. Anthony, you want to go?
Yeah, a couple of really interesting pieces. Just like we were saying, the people-focused corridors was a big discussion, but also I was in the Goldsmith neighborhood. Sorry, just jumping right in. The other really interesting piece, we talked a lot about Yale as part of the Goldsmith neighborhood. One of the corridors that wasn't mentioned in those questions, but Yale is a very important corridor for Goldsmith. And I also want to add in on the park side of thing, when we were talking about the voting of the elements on parks, our voting might have been a little different than most, just because the vicinity to Bible Park and the amount of amenities that are available in Bible Park.
Great, thanks, Anthony. And Jason.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Scott. So I came from the Virginia Village Room, and we had a small group, but a pretty lively discussion, most of which has already been covered. We talked a lot about kind of the transportation piece, and really kind of with a focus on improving pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, especially along the lines of safety. So accessing parks and resources and improving intersections to get to some of those places. And then switching gears to quality of life. We talked a lot about, adding natural landscaping, improving wildlife habitats and native species to kind of help with some of the water quality issues and stormwater runoff, and to really kind of help beautify the parks in your southeast.
Great, thank you, Jason. And thank you, everyone. That's it for tonight. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your thoughts. As I mentioned, there are surveys up on the website, denvergov.org/near southeast plan. Would love it if you take those. Please tell your friends, tell your neighbors about the plan. If you have questions or comments, there's also a comment form on that website. You can submit those to us. We hope you will all continue to participate in the rest of the plan. We've still got over a year to go here, so we hope you'll stay involved. And we're ending just about right on time here. So thank you, everyone, again. Have a great rest of your Thursday evening. Have a good weekend. Looks like the weather will be getting better in the next couple of days, so we all have that to look forward to. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.